No, he sang with the bluegrass band.
Oh, so
2 words.
Well, the real thing is, he's a tenor, I've heard
Yeah.
it many times. And you get through this little run and they're using you. And the black guy do,
Yeah.
I don't know how he did that.
I don't know.
He's a tenor.
I know I couldn't do it. Okay, here we are. It's 10:57, close enough. December the 2nd, it's December already. Bible prophecy lesson number 203. Today is going to be the interesting stuff. Revelation chapter 12. And we'll look at some of this stuff through new eyes today because, man, you know, a year ago I was pretty comfortable with teaching on Revelation. I'm not comfortable with it anymore, and this just happened in the last couple of weeks. Pretty amazing the way things change. So we'll review chapter 11. I got a sign of the times. And I'm not sure I've got a scripture of the day, but then we'll do Revelation chapter 12. So, before we get started, we'll have a word of prayer. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe. You are our King, our Creator, and our Father who dwells in heaven. And we're grateful that we can call you Father and that you call us your children. And we just ask that you would be with us as we're studying these things that you have left behind that continue to grow, and our understanding increases like every day. And we just pray your Holy Spirit to be among us as we study these elements of the revelation that you left with John. We ask your blessing on each group that's here, each family unit, and just grant us peace for the next week and keep us safe until we can meet again, and we pray in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. In chapter 11, John was given a rod to measure the temple, but not to measure the outer courts. If the temple is where I think it is, and Pat's going to argue with me. People arguing with me all the time. Okay, let's all split up. War. Sounds like Democrats and Republicans.
There you go.
But at any rate, if you measure the temple where I think it is, the outer courts would be where the Haram Sharif is today, or Old Fort Antonia. So that's interesting because it says that area is reserved for the nations or for the heathen. And they would trample down the city for 42 months. That kind of gives you a clue as to who the Bible considers to be the heathen, because what is that mosque that's in there, the Mosque of Omar? That's Islam, right? And then the Dome of the Rock. Well, actually, as it turns out, you know, I always thought they built the Dome of the Rock there because they thought that was where the Holy of Holies was, and the mosque people, who was it, Omar, wanted to put his mosque right on top of the Holy of Holies. Well, as it turns out, according to history, he put the mosque there not because he thought the Holy of Holies was there, because at that time nobody thought the Holy of Holies was there. He put it there because there was a church there, and he wanted to put it on top of a church. And that is one of the reasons why, if you go to the inside of it and look up at the portico, you will read the words, I guess they're in Arabic, I don't know, that says, God has no son. Isn't that interesting?
Where's that at?
That's on the portico of the Dome of the Rock.
Should have blown it up in 68.
They tried.
They should have.
And they had a big cannon aimed right at it. And they went to set the cannon off and it wouldn't fire.
Well, who wrote that there? Why did they put it?
Well, Omar and his group did. What they tried to do is to show Islam is superior to all other religions. And when they knocked down those towers in New York, they wanted to build a mosque right there. And that was the reason. And we almost let them get away with it. Okay, God has 2 witnesses. And they're going to prophesy for 1,260 days. And it looks like those 2 witnesses prophesy for the first half of the 7-year tribulation period. And then it says they're killed and they just lay there on the ground dead. And nobody will bury them because they really apparently caused a lot of havoc while they were here. As you well know, the scripture says that they can call fire down from heaven to shut up the clouds, put any kind of plague on the earth at any time that they wanted to. So these guys were not very popular. So everybody was happy. They sent gifts to each other. And then 3.5 days later, they hear a sound from heaven that says, come up here, and they ascend, and there's an earthquake, 7,000 people are killed. And later on in the chapter, the temple of God in heaven opens, and they see the Ark of the Covenant there. The question is, I wonder if that's the Ark of the Covenant was on the earth, or is this the real one? Apparently it is something of an eternal nature. Probably not the one that's on planet Earth right now, somewhere under the, what's the name of the mount? Mount Moriah.
If they're killed after 1,260 days, that would be the same time that the Antichrist would set it.
That's about the time that he is going to commit the abomination of desolation. So it almost plays right in there. And so then you have another 1,260 days, and I think over 3.5 years, or is it 42 months? I mean, it's kind of hard to miss the timing on this because it breaks it down in about 3 different ways. But I think that's the 3.5 years that the woman who is identified by the sign in the heavens, Virgo, escapes and is escaped apparently to Petra, and she's there for 3.5 years. Any questions about any of this?
Do they have earthquakes in Israel currently?
Yeah, they have them occasionally. It's seismically unstable. In fact, there is a fault which runs right through the center of the Mount of Olives. And remember Zechariah 14? It says there's going to be an earthquake there one day, and it's going to split and move north and south. And there's going to be a great valley there formed. And rather than run away from the great valley, all of Israel runs into the valley, and it acts like a bomb shelter. And then everybody around gets incinerated.
Regarding your reading of the sky, did anyone see the sky this morning? Because I thought there was this huge, like a star, and I even looked over there and I thought that can't be. But I guess it was Venus. Did anybody see it? I've never seen anything that big in the sky.
No.
It's to the left and low down from the moon, Moonless Crescent.
Oh, that star. Yeah, I think that is Venus. I think that is Venus.
Huge.
Yeah, it looks really big.
Where do you look?
Well, the moon, this was at 6 in the morning. Got up to let the dogs out. But I looked at it long enough to see it wasn't a helicopter, it wasn't moving.
Yeah, it looks pretty big. Well, you know, the people are always saying that the Bible is just a myth and it's full of mythology and that there never was a Noah. Sodom and Gomorrah, maybe they existed, but they were never fried. That was just, an old wives' tale. You know how the Bible is, always making up stories. Well, now, they've determined that in the Middle East, about 3,700 years ago, at the time of Sodom and Gomorrah, there was an airburst of apparently something like the comet that ran into Tunguska in Russia. Those of you who remember that story, it flattened a big chunk of Siberia. And this was in the early 1900s, and they never could find any crater. Apparently what happened was, this comet must have been made out of ice, but it was huge, and when it hit the atmosphere, it disintegrated and exploded. And it just flattened a chunk of Tunguska, and apparently there was a similar thing that happened right tomorrow. And it wiped out a swath of land called Middle Gore, north of the Dead Sea. And where was Sodom and Gomorrah located? North of the Dead Sea. And it says that it wiped out about 200 square miles, and it wiped out 100% of the cities and towns, but stripped the agricultural soils of the once fertile fields covering the western Middle Gore with a superheated brine of the Dead Sea, and it pushed anhydride salts over the landscape in the frontal shockwave of the event.
Didn't Lot's wife turn into a pillar of salt?
Shazam! She did. So, you always say, well, that was just an old wives' tale. She didn't really turn into a pillar of salt. Well, she may have. I mean, if this thing hit the Dead Sea and vaporized a bunch of it and heated that water up to the point where it, moved all the salt out of the water and that front wave passed over where you would be standing, you probably would get, well, there would be a lot of salt in your body when you got through if you were able to
So
survive.
like Pompeii, you've got people, I mean, the lava was so hot, they're disintegrated, but their shape is there.
Their shape is still there, yeah. The interesting thing was that they found surface of pottery there that was vitrified. If you know what a vitrification is, that's when you heat up the surface so hot that it turns to glass. So they know that that must have been a temperature of over 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, interestingly, parts of the pottery was all right, but that which was on the surface and was exposed to the explosion, it was vitrified. That's kind of interesting, because what that tells you is that was a very quick, intense burst, and then nothing. So it didn't destroy the whole region around there, but that 200 square mile area, it got everything. And interestingly, I have a friend who's a Hollywood producer back in Houston. And at one time we were going to go there, and they know where Sodom and Gomorrah is today. And that city, all around the exterior of the city, there are balls of vitrified sulfur, which means that something, whatever hit that region, had sulfur in it, and the sulfur was heated above 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and it vitrified and made balls, and there were balls of sulfur all over. You know what brimstone is? Sulfur. And that's what hit Sodom and Gomorrah, fire and brimstone. So the point is, these fairy tales that we're told are in the Bible, they're not fairy tales at all. They're probably absolutely true, down to the finest detail. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was also interesting, we had a magnitude 7 earthquake in Anchorage, Alaska. I mean, it tore that place up, something fierce. And also this week, there was a seismic pulse that initiated somewhere in the Indian Ocean, I believe, and went clear around the globe. And nobody can figure out where it came from or why it came, and the scientists are all mystified. Things are happening that we don't know.
Best I read was there was a shift in plates, somehow it shifted.
Something
All
shifted.
these graphs show the picture of the hum from every country's going like, what is this? What is this? And it's just by itself, straight line, and then there's this hum. So it's not part of any normal process. It's global warming.
Global warming, that's it.
Trump will fall.
Yeah. Trump probably landed his plane there somewhere. Okay, well, before we get started with the lesson today, but there are things happening right now that are just crazy in the world of prophecy. The prophecy in Daniel was that when Daniel asked to know, he didn't even know his own prophecy. He couldn't understand it. He said, well, you need to explain this to me now. What does this mean? When is the end of these things? And Daniel said, no, Daniel, not for you. Go your way. This is for the time of the end. And it says that people will run to and fro and knowledge will be increased. The emphasis in this passage is that knowledge about prophecy would be increased. And that looks like what's happening right now. And it is coming hot and heavy, more than I have ever seen in my entire life. This issue of Revelation is astounding to me. I don't know how I missed all this. When you're reading, and I should have known this. I read it enough times. It says in chapter 1 of Revelation that I, John, was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. Rephrase it. I, John, was in the Spirit on the day of the Lord. What is the day of the Lord? That's the tribulation, right? A whole 7-year period. And so when he said, write the things which are, the things which you see, and that which shall shortly take place, almost everything was that which is going to shortly take place. And anything that he wrote, because he was in the day of the Lord, puts all of that event in the day of the Lord. The admonition to the 7 churches. I always thought the church was us, right? But wait a minute. We are now in the day of the Lord. What happened to the church? Is it still here? No. Here's the point. That word church in the Greek is ekklesia, which literally means the called out. There is a similar word in the Hebrew, which means the same thing. And if you look at the Strong's under ekklesia, one of the meanings of the word ekklesia is the called out of Israel. Does that shine a different light on this? These churches apparently are the called out of Israel in the tribulation time. That's why there is so much emphasis on these churches in their performance. It says in chapter 2 here, I know your deeds. Chapter 5, remember therefore from whence you have fallen and repent and do your deeds. Deeds? Works? Then down here in verse 9 of chapter 2, and those who say they are Jews, but they are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Wait a minute. Where's the church? Where's the mercy and grace and peace? No, it's deeds. And you look over here and verse 19. I know your deeds. And your love and faith and service and perseverance, and that your deeds of late are greater than at first. Where's the emphasis here? It's on performance, right? Where, if you're a law keeper, where is your emphasis? On performance. Matthew 5:19. Those who keep the law and teach the law will be great in the kingdom of heaven. Those who neither keep nor teach will be the least in the kingdom of heaven. Performance. Then we get over here to verse 26. And to he who overcomes and he who keeps my deeds until the end, to him I will give authority over the nations. Well, who's going to be here to give authority over? What group is that? Wasn't that the promise to the Israelites, that they would inherit the earth? Not the church. This is a different church. That's the only conclusion I can come to. In chapter 3, and we're going to get to this one today, to the church at Philadelphia, it says, I also will keep you from the hour of testing. That hour that is to come about upon the whole world to test those who dwell upon the earth. That word testing is tribulation, and there's a double emphasis on it in the Greek, which means tribulation, the great tribulation. What the emphasis here on the church at Philadelphia is that they are going to be kept from the great tribulation. When does the great tribulation take place? Matthew 24. Immediately after the abomination of desolation, which is, 3.5 years into the tribulation period, when Israel is taken and protected in Petra. Yeah.
You know, the red heifer mentioned at one time. I thought they just needed one blemish-free red heifer. Apparently there's 10, and they've already had 9. You know any?
As far as I know, you only need one. You need one because it has to be perfect, as you point out.
Well, I'd like to throw that out there that they've already had 9 and they're looking for the 10th, because I never heard that before.
Well, I've read the Mishnah. The Mishnah just says one. It's got to be perfect. It has to be a red heifer. It can't have a single black hair on it. And yeah, in order to cleanse the temple, you have to have that heifer. And you bring him across the Kidron Valley up to the other side, and you burn him to ashes along with hyssop and some other wood. And then you take those ashes, mix them with the pool of Siloam water, and you use that to re-sanctify the temple.
If they're looking for a male heifer, they're gonna be looking for a long time.
Them male heifers are hard to come by. At least that's what I've been told. I'm not a farmer.
Interesting too, they just found Pool of Siloam.
Oh, yeah?
They just found it. The Pool of Siloam.
So my point is, you know, here I've been teaching this all this time, and I've been wrong all this time. But isn't that the way prophecy is?
So we're gonna start over?
We're gonna start all over.
Back to lesson
We're
one.
gonna start all over, yeah. No, just disregard the last 202 lessons. Disregard. But the funny thing, not the funny thing, but it's interesting how every generation there is a certain amount of understanding that the Spirit gives to certain people, like Chuck Missler. You know, Chuck knew a whole lot about a whole lot of things. This never even came into Chuck's mind. The appointed times, he was never there. But he had so many other gifts that he was giving. And it's like every generation stands on the shoulders of the previous generation. And everybody, as we get closer and closer to the time, we have a better and better understanding. And it's just, to me, amazing. Because it proves just what David said. David said, truly thou art a God who hides himself. And then in Proverbs, verse 25, it says, it is the glory of God to hide a matter, but the honor of kings to search it out. We've been searching a long time, and we haven't found much honor here. But boy, it's coming fast and furious right now. And so for that reason alone, man, we got to be at the end of the age.
Well, and then if we're gonna be kings and priests, it's the honor of the kings to search it out, so.
Here's the next story. I'm not sure we're going to be kings and priests. The kings and priests part. You should have been here the last couple of weeks. The kings and priests apparently was given to those churches in the tribulation period. So where is the church? I pointed out last week that it looks like we're not kings and priests, but when the New Jerusalem is seen coming from God out of heaven, it says, here comes his bride, adorned as like a bride for her husband. And in that New Jerusalem is the bride. And in Revelation 22, these are phenomenal words, because what this does is, you know, I thought being a king and a priest is pretty good duty. Well, guess where I think we are? 22 verse 17, and the Spirit and the bride say, come. What it's doing here, it's putting the bride and the Spirit on the same level. Who is the bride of Christ? The church. We reside in the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven. This is even better than being a king or a priest.
And so then are the Jews gonna be kings
It looks that way.
and priests? They are, huh?
They are.
There's an argument about that.
What can I say?
Well, they go through the rapture. I mean, they do not, the church goes through the rapture, the Jews do not.
Well, here's the story. That's right.
Well, the ones who don't believe, who haven't accepted Christ.
Right.
You accepted Christ as your Savior. There's a different set of rules that apply to you. You are saved by virtue of your faith. Happy is the man who, without any works to his credit, who simply puts his faith in the one who acquits the guilty. His faith is accounted as righteousness. We are righteous by virtue of faith. Is Israel righteous by virtue of faith? Jesus came to seek and save the lost house of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He didn't come for the church. Who did he come? Well, how does that all work? Well, 11 of the apostles were sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. One was sent to the Goyim, which are us. And it's the mystery of the church, all of these ages, that the church was going to be the bride of Christ. And when it said over there that we don't know now perfectly what we shall be, but we will figure it out later. It looks like that's what we shall be, an equal up there with Jesus, the Spirit, and God himself. It's almost like God is magnifying his personality in the heavenlies. This is heavy duty stuff in my estimation. So the bride up there is pushed up to the same level as the Spirit. It is these two entities of the heavenly host that are above even the kings and the priests. This is heavy stuff.
When you look at how God created marriage and how he set that as an example, the two become one flesh, they're equal parts, each other. So that would make sense as the bride that we would be one with.
Co-equal with the Messiah and rule and reign with him, but not as kings and priests, but hey, the King of Kings. Well, it's hard to get your mind around all of that.
Who works in the temple?
Huh?
Who works in the temple?
Oh, well, there is a whole bunch of people that at the front end of the tribulation are called out.
Oh, okay, those things.
And they are temple workers.
Well, I know that Gary scrubbed toilets.
Somebody's gotta take care of the fisheries. There's gotta be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Gary is going to be in charge of the fisheries on the, what is it, the stream that flows between the trees down the holy avenue on heaven. I'm sure there's fish in there. Bound to be. At least there'll be a few maybe left after Gary gets through with his job. Okay, in Revelation chapter 12, another pregnant chapter. Now, Freudian slip. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and on her head 12 stars. That word signs is a sign of a portending a remarkable event soon to happen in the Greek. And heaven is Uranos, which means the sidereal or starry heavens. So John is seeing this sign in the star background of the sky. Now, the woman, clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, garland of 12 stars over her head, she was pregnant, and she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. And then there was another sign. Now, she hadn't given birth yet. Then there was another sign appeared in heaven, and a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems upon his heads. Whoever this is, it's in the heavens. The implication is that this sign is in the same region of the sky as the first sign. Now here is a picture of the constellation Virgo on the 9th of September, 21st of September, 2017. There's the 22nd. Notice where the moon is. It's moving. And there it's under the feet of Virgo on the 23rd, which interestingly is the day after Rosh Hashanah. And if you look up here, there are 9 stars in Leo, and then there's Venus, Mars, and Mercury that are in the same region. That's a total of 12 stars. That particular organization of stars hasn't been seen for 4,000 years in the past and a couple thousand into the future. It is a very unique set of circumstances. So this is apparently the woman in the sky, and that woman, by the way, with 12 stars over her head, is a symbol of what? Israel, right? 12 tribes, she's got 12 stars on her head. So this implies that this child that's being born is coming from Israel. Is that a stretch? There is a passage in the scripture which says at the end times there will be a star that comes out of Jacob. And who is Jacob? Israel. And that star, by the way, is, well, we'll mention that.
So where is all that right now?
Well, it's not there now. It's gone. There are no 12 stars over her head. And so
That was 2017?
that was 2017. But notice the passage doesn't say anything happens at that moment in time. It just says she was pregnant and about to give birth. She hadn't given birth. And that great dragon is next up on the scene. We got to see the great dragon first before she is going to give birth. Now, the interesting part is that his tail, the red dragon's tail, threw a third of the stars of heaven into the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. If we were to look in the direction of Virgo, we ought to see this sign, and it's got to be somewhere close to Virgo because it was about to devour the child which is being born out of Virgo. So there's another reason to believe we want to be looking at Virgo for this sign, okay? Now, this third of the stars of heaven, in Revelation 6, at the opening of the sixth seal, it says, stars of heaven fell to earth as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. This sixth seal is the sixth of 7 plagues that begin the tribulation period. Not great tribulation, but tribulation. So it looks like there's a correlation here. So these third of the stars of heaven may be the next thing up. Now, the red dragon. Now, you recall NASA found this wonderful 7-star system, which corresponds exactly to the Zohar's description of the pre-Messiah Nibiru. In Shemos 7a, this is in the Zohar, it says, and after 40 days that a pillar will stand from the earth to the heavens, in all the eyes of the world, the Moshiach will be revealed. The star will rise from the east side, flaming with all colors, and 7 other stars will go around this star and make a war with it on on all sides, 3 times a day for 70 days, and all the people of the world will see it. We got a star with 7 orbiting around it. Where have we seen that? A dragon which has 7 heads and 10 horns. And it also says that this same star will make war with them with blazes of fire and flaming and sparking on each side. And it will hit them until it swallows them each and every night. And then in the day, it returns and expels them, and they'll make war in the eyes of the whole world. What we got here is a star system, a system with a burnt-out star, a red dwarf, with stars, planets orbiting it, and the orbits are real quick, they're fast, and it appears that this whole thing is spiraling as it goes around us. And one of the ancient manuscripts records an event of a red star that seemed to be, it said it was making a helix through the sky. And it reminded me of the twisted Leviathan serpent in the Old Testament. These may be one and the same. But the interesting thing is that we've got Nibiru, which at least one technician who was reported on the internet, on YouTube, said he saw it through the Hubble Space Telescope. He said it has 7 stars around it. And not only that, it has a whole field of junk around it, trillions of chunks of junk, like red iron dust that surrounds this thing. And so we're getting a whole lot of intersecting data that's pointing to Nibiru as that mechanism. And we should be seeing it here in the region of Virgo. The next question is, why in the world did we build a infrared telescope in the South Pole? Why didn't we build it in the North Pole? Well, the reason we built it in the South Pole, because you can't see Nibiru on the North Pole. You got to be on the south side of the planet because it's coming from the bottom up. We apparently were well aware of this back in the 70s, 80s, because there were scientists who could not explain the perturbations in the orbit of the outer planets, Pluto and Neptune. They were being sucked down as they moved across a certain part of the sky. And it implied that there was a massive gravitational field out there of some kind, which implies there's a planet or something. They called it Planet X. And then all of a sudden, it went dark. Nobody talked about it again. In the meantime, we sent a satellite out there called Pioneer 10. Pioneer 10 found it. And that's why it went dark, because everybody in the deep state, they know exactly what's going on. This sucker is headed this way, and when it gets here, it's going to tear up the inside of the planets of this solar system of ours, something fierce. And the interesting thing is, if you look at South Pole Telescope, the first picture that got snuck out of there in 2008, it doesn't show all of the planets, but it shows 6 planets, and the 7th one's too big to see, but they're all orbiting around a red dwarf star. And their orbits are very quick. And that red dwarf star, if you make a line between the cardinal points of the planets, it makes a cross. And remember what Jesus said when he answered his apostles on the Olivet Discourse. They said, "What will be the sign of your coming?" And he said, "Well, you'll see it just before I get here. You'll see the sign of the coming of the Son of Man." He didn't say what it was. But my suspicion is this is it. And this sucker is going to look like it's coming right at planet Earth. It will look like a cross, and there will be absolutely no way that you can get away from it. It's going to hit the planet. But what does it say in Matthew 24? Unless those days were shortened, no life would have survived. I can guarantee you, if this thing gets anywhere close to planet Earth, no life will survive. It will tear the planet up if it just gets close. Yeah. Oh, do you have a question?
That's why Elon Musk is going to move to Mars.
Yeah, he better move real quick. But I got a feeling Mars is in the same. That's a close-up of the thing, and you can see it's red, and you can see the dust and junk flying off of it. Apparently, the surface is very effervescent, which stands to reason. It's probably got a fair amount of hydrogen in it, in the core, that's being fused, and that fusion process is creating heat, and it's expanding outward, and whenever that heated gas gets to the surface, and we believe the surface to be molten iron, it's going to make a bubble and pop. And when it makes a bubble and pops, it's going to blow this stuff out into the atmosphere. And the one witness who claimed to have seen it, he said it's chunks of iron, and they weigh about 100 pounds, just like the Revelation account says.
It's kind of fitting that a giant iron Alka-Seltzer is headed towards us. We're in need of
An
something.
iron Alka-Seltzer. Yeah, we're going to need some acid relief. Okay, and it says she bore a male child who was to rule over all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Remember, we're in the tribulation now. This can't be the church, because we're in the tribulation. Remember what John said? I was in the Spirit on the day of the Lord. This whole event is taking place while John is in the Spirit and on the day of the Lord. So I tried to put it outside. I thought this was the church. Apparently not. Remember, Revelation chapter 2, he who overcomes and keeps my works to the end, to him I will give power over the nations, and he will rule them with a rod of iron, and they shall be dashed to pieces like potter's vessels, as I also have received from my Father. And I will give him the morning star. Who gets the power over the nations? Israel. They were always promised the land. And then in Isaiah 66, the sound of a noise from the city, a voice from the temple, the voice of the Lord who fully repays his enemies. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a male child. Who's the she? Looks like it's the city. And who is the city? That's Jerusalem. And where's Jerusalem? That's in the middle of Judea. Before her pain came, it's got to be a group within Israel that is in the tribulation period. Not great tribulation, perhaps, but tribulation nonetheless. And who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she gave birth to her children. That's not a good interpretation. The same word here for son, it's Ben. And Ben, like Ben-Hur, for example. What does that mean? That means son of her. So her children, that should have been son. She gave birth to her son. And who is her in this context? It's a nation that's born all at once. And one day, what do we know about Israel? May 15th, 1948, it became a nation all in one day. She bore a male child who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God in his throne. Well, where did this take place? It looks like the admonition to the church at Philadelphia was, I know your works. Works. Well, saved by your works? Not if you're a Christian. But if you're in the household of Judah or Israel, and you have attempted to keep the law, you're under the law, right? So works have are valuable. That's how your eternal destiny is determined, by your works. See, I have set before you an open door which no one can shut. For you have a little strength and have kept my word and not denied my name. Indeed, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews but are not, but lie. Indeed, I will make them come and worship before your feet and know that I have loved you. All of the inferences here imply this is Israel or Judah or both, right? After all, why does the church care about whether people say they're Jews or not? The church is Jew, Gentile, and everybody, right? But this particular group, it's of interest. That implies this is Israel. Then it says, because you have kept my commandment, these are law keepers, I will also keep you from the hour of trial, which is coming over the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Once again, the testing, double emphasis in the Greek, which is tribulation, the great tribulation. These people are being kept from the great tribulation, which is the back half of the tribulation 7-year period. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. And we read in Matthew 24, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let those who are on the housetop not go down to take anything out of the house. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the midst of the week he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and the offering. And on the wing of the abomination shall be one who makes desolate, even unto the consummation which is determined is poured out upon the desolate. All that means is there is going to be an abomination of desolation in the midst of the 7-year period. And for the final half of the 7-year period, some who are still here in the house of Israel will be protected in Petra. But there are some who are going to be caught up. The word caught up is harpazo. Harpazo, one of its meanings is to rescue from the danger of destruction. And I'll guarantee you, if you're here in the back half of the tribulation period, you've got significant danger of destruction.
Do you think then that Nibiru is going to be what, is going to hit before or in the middle of tribulation and be what causes the terrible destruction? The last time.
It's from stem to
This
stern.
is saying from Breaking Israel News that NASA's possibility of a cataclysmic meteor strike in 2023, which means that would be, if that's in the middle of the 7.5 years, then we're looking at hopefully being out of here end of 2019, beginning of 2020.
It's got to be really soon. I mean, all the signs are pointing to it. You know, it's not just one thing. It's the revelation of understanding of the scriptures that's profound right now. That alone is enough to make you believe we're really close. It's the fact that, at least to my understanding and satisfaction, I know who the Antichrist is, and he's got stage 4 prostate cancer. He can't be here much longer if things continue on. So that says, well, we're at the end of the end, and all of these others, we're seeing the sign. We saw the sign of the woman. So we know that we're not far away. I mean, it's not 100 years down the road. It's got to be pretty quick, right? And then if we begin to see Nibiru in the sky, then, yeah, sell all your war bonds. You won't need them anymore. Yeah.
Where is it now? You're finding out where it is now? In relation to us?
In September of the year, Virgo is front and center in the sky in the background. You can't see it with the naked eye yet, but it's on the left leg of Virgo, and it has been covered up. If you go to Google Sky, it has an infrared shot of that region. They blacked that whole piece out, which means they drew emphasis to it. Because if you go to IRAS, which is another infrared satellite, they didn't. And the thing looks just like the face of a smiling red dragon. I mean, it's amazing. So you can see it now, but only through an infrared camera. But it won't be too much longer till we can see it, just like the house of Israel saw it when they left Egyptian captivity. It's going to look like a pillar of fire at night and a pillar of cloud by day. And it's going to scare the pajamas out of everybody. And that's why they got all of these tunnels dug. Every nation has them. Daniel chapter 11, it says, "For ships from Cyprus will come against him, and therefore he shall be grieved and return in rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he will return and show regard for those who forsake the holy covenant." Got some Jews that are going to turn. "And forces will be mustered by him, and they shall defile the sanctuary fortress, and then they shall take away the daily sacrifice and place there the abomination of desolation." This is the Antichrist. He's coming out of Iran. He's going to run rampant over the Middle East, which means something happens to take away the ability of the United States to intervene. Something happens. How about an EMP?
They're going to impeach Trump.
Yeah, impeach Trump. That'll do it.
How about the rapture and not that many people left?
Right.
And so
World
now
being
we
in
do.
chaos, or America being in chaos.
Now, there is an interesting issue because the Old Testament says that the righteous man is caught away and no one takes it to heart. It apparently happens that when the church is gone, nobody really misses us.
Well, if you're living in California, they won't know you're gone. There's only 5.
No, there's only 14 witnesses
I
there.
mean, if all the Christians are gone, then there'll be nobody in the U.S. to care about Israel. They're all there.
That is another powerful point.
They're on their own.
The only reason why we are on the side of Israel right now is because of the evangelical group in the United States. Because if it weren't for them, how long do you think it would take the Democrats to turn on Israel in a heartbeat? They're already against them.
They were fixing to in January.
Yeah.
Someday, can you talk about Mossad and am I saying that? And how it fits into all of this. I don't know anything about them, you know, like,
The Mossad?
yeah, it's like we're supposed to side with Israel and support them and back them up. But then the next day you get the story about the Mossad trying to bring us down and causing all this trouble. So,
No, I hadn't heard that story. But the Mossad is one of the most effective intelligence and operating systems in the world. The Jews know how to get things done. And don't ever cross the Jews like they did with the Munich massacre and think you're going to get away with it, because every last mother's son who did that got their ticket punched by Israel. So Israel is not to be trifled with.
And just on a side note, did you see that scientists in Israel, Jewish scientists, have found a way to take human cells and regrow and heal damaged parts in your brain, in your spine, your knees.
So now we're getting to the point now
They're
where
not using aborted babies to do
not
it.
doing it, just take your cells and all your chromosomes are there.
Yeah.
So if you know how to manipulate them, you can regrow a hand or you can regrow a liver. Why do you need babies? You don't need dead babies anymore. You got them right here. Use the skin in the side of your mouth.
And that's what these Jewish scientists have done.
So things are getting very curious, very curious. Okay, where did the woman go? Okay, in Isaiah chapter 16, it says, send the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah, that means Petra, to the wilderness, to the mount of the daughter of Zion, for it shall be as a wandering bird thrown out of its nest. So shall be the daughters of Moab at the fords of Arnon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make your shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Hide the outcasts. Do not betray him who escapes. Who are we talking about here? Israel has escaped. It is an outcast. It's not in its country anymore. And the admonition is to the daughters of Moab, you better be taking care of these people and don't betray them. And let my outcasts dwell with you, O Moab. Be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end. Devastation ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. And that's exactly what happens at the end of the tribulation period. So where's Petra? Looks like Petra is where that big red star is. Well, where is Moab? It's right there where that big red star was, right? So we got a good candidate for where they are going. And if you look at Petra today, there may be people living there, but they're not very many. They're probably just people to handle the tourist industry there. But that place can handle a whole bunch of people. It is really designed well. The Sabbateans did a fine job. They got cisterns in there with thousands of gallons of water stored away. Every time it rains, it fills up the cistern.
But they don't live in Petra, in where all the Israelites were.
No, I've not seen any indication anybody lives there right now. But there is plenty of places for them to hide in Petra. So that's my case. Back to Revelation 12. And war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was there a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world, and he was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, this is an interesting story. Remember Jesus? He said, I saw Satan cast down. How can he see Satan cast down when he ain't been cast down yet? I refer you back to Isaiah. I am God, there is no other, creator of light and darkness, good and evil, the one who knows the end from the beginning. Jesus is just saying, I and God are in the same boat. We know exactly what happened, and we saw this before it ever happened. Then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, and the accuser of our brethren, who has accused him before our God day and night, has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to death.
Carl,
What?
going back to that previous devil being cast down to earth. This is in the day of the Lord, which is a future point in time.
Correct.
And Satan will be cast down to the earth and all of his angels, demons. But they're already here.
Yeah.
Well, Satan apparently has access, and some of his higher order angels apparently have access to heaven. Now, here is another interesting story. The very first prophecy of the scripture, what was it? The seed of the woman will bruise the head of the seed of the serpent, and the seed of the serpent will bruise the heel of the seed of the woman. The question has never been raised, who is the seed of the serpent? He's got his own progeny down here, and they are demonically empowered. And I think they've been here a long time. Have you heard the stories about what's going on in Antarctica? There are demons down there. One of our astronauts went down there and he came back darn near dead. And he was reported as saying, as he came back, he says, there is great evil down there. Apparently they are there in body in Antarctica. I know it's not well known, but at the end of World War II, we chased a bunch of Nazis south. And they got down close to the South Pole, as the story goes, and they were attacked by a flying saucer. And they had to turn around and come back. Now, obviously, they're not going to report such a thing, but apparently there's demonic forces down there. And they were protecting some of the Nazis. And we know one of the things about the Nazis is they were really into the occult. And there were demonic forces happening there. And history reports it because they had supernatural knowledge of what was going on in the war.
The theory about the Satan casting down from heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of there's a big theory about there's certain levels of heaven.
Yeah.
I think Paul talks about it too.
There's a third heaven.
That he went to where the certain level of heaven, and they think that the Satan and demons they've been kicked out of the heaven where the God is, where God resides, but they are still on the certain level of heaven, like space would be one level of heaven,
Yeah.
our atmosphere
And our
is another
atmosphere is
level
the
of
first
heaven.
heaven, yeah.
They think that Satan and demons still in the space where with the stars and everything.
Well, we could go into that and probably get everybody to leave the class before
it says that
some of the things that are going on with Nibiru. Because if you read the story of Zachariah Sitchin, he says if you read the Sumerian cuneiform documents, it talks about the Anunnaki, the Anakim in the scripture. These were the sons of the Ben Elohim, the sons of angels, the fallen ones that came down here. And it says that they occupy a planet on Nibiru. And I mean, it's crazy. You can get into this as deep as you want, and we may never know the entire story, but I guarantee you there's more to the story than what we know. Let me move right along here. They overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Who dwells in the heavens now? The bride, that's for one. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and to the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows he's got short time. He ain't going to be here for long. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been cast down to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time from the presence of the serpent. Okay, 2 wings of a great eagle. We're going to fly out of Judea? How does that work? I don't know how that works. I do know that it's interesting that the symbol of the great state, the great nation of the United States is an eagle. Do we have a part in that? It's hard to say. I kind of doubt it because we're in the tribulation now and all the saints are gone from this country. So,
But there will be some saved though, after the tribulation.
oh, absolutely. I think there'll be a great number saved. So, hey, maybe we have a part in this. I'm not sure. And she's nourished for times, and half a time. And as you've heard me say, that word for times, it is a Greek word like our word both. It means two. So, time, 2 times, half a time, that's 3.5 times, that's 3.5 years. And so she was nourished for 3.5 years, 42 months, or 1,260 days. And then interestingly, the serpent spewed out water from his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by. But the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon had spewed out of its mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went off to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have a testimony of Jesus Christ. This appears to be the nature of the church during the tribulation. They have a testimony of Jesus Christ, but they're also keeping commandments. They are law keepers. Maybe this is the nature of the church during the tribulation period.
I mean, the Jews that woke up.
They woke up. Well, it won't be only the Jews that wake up. It'll be others that wake up. And apparently the Jews who keep the commandments and who have the testimony of Jesus, their reward will be one thing. There will be others who just have the testimony of Jesus. And it may be those that get out in the front end of the tribulation period. That's the great number that John saw that nobody could count the number of. Maybe those. I don't know. We're all speculating. But it's something along those lines. And this flood very well could be the impact of a meteor. And it washes over the land. But what's between Petra and the Mediterranean? Biggest ditch in the world, called the Dead Sea, 1,500 feet below sea level. I'll guarantee you, if a tidal wave rolled over the shore, it gets swallowed up in the Dead Sea. It would not make it to Petra. So that's just one theory of how this might work. The end.
I know, but it's 12. Real quick before questions. Next Saturday is our Christmas fellowship. Almaz and Corey will be in Dallas. Is that right with the kids? Okay. All right. Everybody else should be here except Pat. Doris is bringing her deviled eggs, which I'm counting on. So.